Hello there and welcome back to Grass Me Up, the premier lawn care and sports turf podcast. Everything to do with grass with me, Dr. Russell Sharp, the founder of Utrema Limited. We manufacture novel fertilizers, interesting biostimulants and organic biopesticides for use in all forms of agriculture and horticulture, including lawn care and sports turf. One of the things I wanted to talk about today is damage from Weedkiller, from herbicide. Now, we don't manufacture weed killers or herbicides here at Utrema because A, we haven't got any good technology that we've developed yet for that, and two, it costs £1 million to register a herbicide, and we don't have £1 million. That's around doing nothing, so don't come and rob us. But we can tell you what to do if you've accidentally damaged your grass, your turf, by accidentally applying a non-selective herbicide or even a selective herbicide. So what I mean by that is the likes of glyphosate or Roundup, you'll have heard of, very most famous weed killer, and it's used as a non-selective, so it kills all plants, and it's used routinely in farming, but it's used a lot in amenity and sports turf and for paths and for just killing off areas. So a lot of people buy Roundup, but the problem is that it will kill grass. And you might think, fine, I won't put it on my grass. But what if somebody applied it to a path or somebody applied it to an area and then you walked on it and then walked on your lawn? You could get footprints going through your lawn, or you could be inexperienced and just say, I need weed killer because I've got weeds in my lawn. Therefore, this weed killer will kill the weeds and it won't kill the grass. A lot of people do that. A lot of inexperienced people, a lot of noobs, as they would say on the internet, and they put the weed killer on and it kills the grass. What do you do then? Now, you can't go back in time. Captain Hindsight will say, don't do that. But there are a number of tips and tricks you can use to bind the active ingredient and stop it from killing the grass. The first thing you can do is apply some form of calcium. Now, you can buy CalMag products on the internet. You can buy lime. You could buy gypsum in a granular form. But the best option is to apply liquid gypsum because it's a super active instant dose of calcium to your soil. So that will bind the glyphosate. Glyphosate is a phosphorus-containing compound that loves to bind to calcium. Glyphosate is negatively charged. It's an anion, and calcium is a cation, positively charged. Bit of GCSE or A-level chemistry there. So that's the first thing you do. The second thing is don't apply any phosphorus-containing fertilizer because that will further keep the Roundup, the glyphosate, active for longer. So ditch any fertilizer you're going to apply. You might think the first thing you need to do is apply a fertilizer. That's probably not the best thing you can do, not until it's reseeded and start to grow again. The other things you can do is stimulate microbial activity, maybe buy some microbes, some good quality microbial products, or simply, what else could you do? So you could look at making your own compost tea, but that was more for the experienced and expert level lawn care enthusiasts that would be doing that. Certainly avoid any iron sulfate applications because that will harm the soil biology in the soil and further slow down the microbial breakdown of the glyphosate. The glyphosate's only going to disappear, it's only going to break down once the microbes have got at it and started to metabolize it. The calcium just binds it into an inactive form. Now, what you can do also is apply activated carbon or charcoal granules. Biochar is another term for it. But basically, activated carbon will bind the weed killer. And it won't just bind glyphosate. It will bind other things like selective weed killers, like 2,4-D and things like this. So activated carbon is an expensive option. So if you knew you were applying glyphosate and you knew it was glyphosate or Roundup damage, then my first thing would be apply calcium, apply liquid gypsum. But if you weren't sure or it wasn't Roundup and you were still getting damaged, then activated carbon is always good because it's always going to bind the weed killer. I'm not aware of any weed killers that won't bind to activated carbon or biochar. And it has to be biochar that's not been treated with fertilizer, so no nutritional value to it. So go for the activated carbon. You can buy activated carbon off eBay and sprinkle that or somehow apply it to the damaged areas and that will mop up any applied weed killer. Now, you might think a selective weed killer, well, how's that going to harm my grass? Well, it will. If the grass is very tender, very young, it will. Although it's selective, it still will have a toxicity to the grass. It's just far more toxic to the broadleaf weeds in the grass. So if you apply it to a plant that's already on the edge, already weak, then it will damage it. Any pesticide will always have some sort of toxicity to the plant. There's always a disadvantage of applying it. So be careful with the sort of applying, especially when you've got a newly established lawn. If you've got broadleaf weeds, always try spending some time manually removing them. If you're on a small area, so that could be a home domestic lawn, or it could be a golf green. Obviously, things like football pitches, that's unrealistic. But a golf green or a small domestic lawn, you could sit there and remove the grass in the time it takes you to go out and buy the weed killer and things like that. And there's no toxicity from that. And it's time spent enjoying your lawn. You just sit there listening to a podcast like this, or maybe a more enjoyable, more interesting one. And there you go. I mean, I don't see why people think that removing dandelions from their lawn is such an onerous task. I suppose if you were trying to do it really quickly and you're bending down rather than sitting on your lawn, then it can be a bit of a problem. So you've treated your damaged footprints or your damaged whole lawn potentially due to weed killer damage. What do you do next? Well, you're going to have to remove the dead material, so sort of scarify it, remove it to open it up, remove that dead grass or the very yellowing grass, and then reseed. So everything that you do with reseeding, making sure you've got a nice seed bed, maybe applying some sand on top, maybe some fleece down as well, and watering it regularly if it's dry, just making sure there's nice contact between the seed and the soil, and maybe a sprinkle of seaweed extract, or potentially even humic acid would be a good one, because there's lots of carbon in humic acid solution, just to get the grass growing again. And then only when it's really, really, really growing, especially if it's glyphosate damage, then apply an NPK fertilizer, but not any phosphorus anytime soon, because you could flush out the glyphosate. So it's not the end of the world. It is dramatic. It does make you look like an idiot, stupid. If you've got footprints, especially big wellies walking across your lawn, people will notice it, especially if it's your front garden. So it's a very visible, and what people want to get sorted very quickly. So that's my solutions. I'm sure there are solutions there that you've never heard of before. Things like the carbon, the phosphorus, the lack of phosphorus. Don't be applying iron sulfate. You can apply chelated iron, that's fine, and applying the calcium as well. So I think some really interesting top tips there. If you've enjoyed this, then please do leave an Apple Podcast review. If you thought it's the worst podcast you've ever listened to, then don't leave a podcast review. If you've got any comments, then let me know, and check out utrema.co.uk, our blog. We've got loads of blogs on interesting topics, all to do with different ways of growing grass and other crops. I'm sure you'll find more information there as well that you'll find interesting. And if you've got any questions or comments, then do let me know. I think I've already said that. I'll go now because I'm rambling. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.